Hey guys, welcome back to the video. I am Rick, the Honest Mechanic, and today's video is going to be about my arch nemesis, outboard motors. Not a big fan of repairing these, which is why this has been sitting around the shop for about 2 years. So the story behind that is there's nothing wrong with it at the moment other than an impeller. Last it was put away, it started and ran great in the tub, and you know, it idles, it does everything it's supposed to do, but it overheats because I have a feeling the impeller is probably dry rotted and needs to be replaced. So we're going to tackle that and see if the parts are still even available, because it would be sad to see a beautiful little, Mercury engine like this go to waste. Before I get too far, also don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you do in fact like it, and stick around to the end of the video where you will have a tip of the day like I've been doing in some of the other videos. So let's get right into it. If you're new to boating or just new to outboard motors, let me just give you a little bit of a background onto how these engines work when it comes to the cooling system. So, I mean, you're on the water, so you have an almost unlimited supply of cooling water in that lake. So what they do is right down usually in the foot here, this is called the foot, there will be a little pump that draws water from the lake, sucks it up the foot into the cooling system in the water jackets, and that's what keeps these engines running at the proper temperature. What happens over time is those are usually made of rubber, these little impellers, and the fins will either break off or they will dry. And if they're not all there, or if they're worn down, they won't pump enough water or any water at all for that matter. So we're going to start by dismantling this. We're going to have to remove the foot to gain access to exactly that impeller and see if we can, like I said earlier, get some parts. So let's start by removing the cover on this one. We got two little ears on each side, and the cover comes straight off. Something like this. Come on. It's been a while. There you go. Straight out that way. And the cool thing about this one is the recoil is actually built into the cover. It's cool, but not when you have to repair it. It's a great design and they're pretty well built. But one thing that I do want to make note of before we go too far, since we're working with an impeller, is I need to take note of the direction of rotation the engine spins, while it's running. So if I take a look at this, it is going counterclockwise, which would make it go clockwise when I'm looking at it from the top. Make note of that. Sorry for the interruption, guys. I was just thinking of something while I was editing this video, and I got a little confused what I just said there. So the recoil turns counterclockwise in the cover, which is supposed to make the engine go clockwise. I couldn't quite understand it, couldn't quite physically see it in my mind, so I've come up with an idea here to visually see it and just make sure that I don't, throw anybody off with some bad information. So I'm going to take a piece of tape and I'm going to just kind of line up some of these teeth over here. And my idea here, my theory is that once I put the cover back on and I engage the teeth, we should be able to tell where it's contacted the tape, and that'll tell us the truth. Just like that. We'll do a couple of little trials here. Should be enough. Take this off. And let's have a look as to where it contacted. Oh yeah, so right here, I'm going to turn it so you can see with the camera easier. Right there you can see where, let me grab the camera. Right here you can clearly see that the gear contacted the that side of the pawl, or the pawl got that side of the gear, which forces the engine to turn clockwise. Okay, so now we know. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to tilt the engine up just for easier access. I'll lock it this way. Make sure we're not going to fall off our little stand here. And just locate all of the hardware and bolts that are holding the foot onto the power head. So the engine on these outboards are called power heads. And then, like I said, down below here, this is called the foot area. So there's a gear case in here. And this one, it's a 3.9 horsepower Mercury. And it's got a forward and reverse gear, which is really cool because in that era, believe it or not, some of these other brands, and even including Mercury, didn't have a gear case. All they did was spin the whole engine around to face the other direction when you wanted to back up or navigate different ways. So anyways, let's start taking some bolts apart. From what I can tell, it looks like it splits right here, and it's possibly only one. Well, maybe I'm going to cross my fingers. Like I said, these are my Nemesis, guys. I'm sure something is going to happen. I got a bad omen with these things, but I'm going to take this nut out here, and hopefully that whole thing will slide out, and you'll see there'll be a drive shaft in here, and there'll more than likely be a small little rubber hose that will connect the solid pickup tube for the water. 13 millimeters seems to be the right size. Break this free here. Oh, that's on there nice and tight. It's a good thing, but I wasn't expecting it. Okay, we're going to put that over here. And with any luck, actually, before we go too far, see this little grate right here? This is the water pickup. This is the grate's there just to prevent any larger pieces of debris. That seemed like a difficult word for me to say there. Larger pieces of debris to make their way into the water pump or impeller and damage it. So hopefully now that's all I need to loosen to break it free. And I'm gonna go grab, oh, that's a lie. There was one right here as well. And that's probably also the same size, but I'm gonna have to use a wrench for that one. This one looks fun to reinstall because it won't even come all the way out. A little bit of a love tap with a hammer here. Oh yeah, look at that. Hopefully you can see it, but there's a nice opening here now. This probably hasn't been apart in, well, 25, 30 years. So it's always interesting to do this kind of stuff though, because technology has changed so much. However, you look at something like this and I find it simple. Simple yet effective. And isn't that the whole point of doing stuff? Keeping it simple and effective? Okay. Holy moly. That was not expected. That just shot right out of there. Okay. Well, hopefully it's not damaged here. And this is like super light, by the way. Woo! That just launched right out. It was being held. I can see it now. So right here, you can see the rust. That's what was holding it. And this is your gear selector. So one thing I want to mention, guys, is once you've started playing around with these, do not move that gear selector, because if you do, whether you move it here or here, it's going to be almost impossible to line it up, and you're going to really not have a good day. So now this is my little pickup tube, and the rubber is still in there, which is good. Actually doesn't seem to be too bad. Maybe the kit will come with a new one. If it does, I'm going to replace it. But it also has a little dimple where it holds it in place. And this is the drive shaft. I'm not sure if you can see it turn when I turn the propeller, but that's all that. And inside this little thing is your little tiny impeller / water pump. So as it spins off of the drive shaft, as the engine rotates, it pushes up water. And we're going to take it apart right now just to see what it looks like. Alright, now let's take a look at the impeller. So we've got some hardware holding it here, 7/16 on each side. Put those aside, and then we're slowly going to, oh look at that, just coming right off. All the way up to the top. Oh, we got our O-ring here. I can tell you for sure that this seal is no longer sealing very well on the shaft, and that might be causing a problem. And as for the impeller itself, I'm going to take the cover off here. Got a little screwdriver. Perfect. And this only goes in one way because there's a little dimple. And how does the pump look like? Well, the pump actually... Oh, and remember, I was talking about which direction the engine turns and why it's important. Well, if we turn it clockwise, you'll see that these blades are set up in a way that they go clockwise. Now, if you also notice, they're dry. They're so dry that, in fact, this one in particular is no longer scraping the sides. So this impeller is formed what they call a set. So it's set into its position where it's supposed to spring back and scrape the sides of the housing in order to pump water. But now it doesn't do that. It's just they're set. They're stuck where they are. They formed themselves into a bend, and that's just the way it is. So unfortunately, this impeller is toast. So when we put it back in, we need to make sure that we rotate the new one clockwise so that it sets the blades the right way. And this right here, this little guy, is our impeller. This is what we were after, and we got it. And you can tell that, well, like I said, these little fins are supposed to be straight out. They're supposed to be kind of like that all the way around, but because it's sat for such a long time, and even if it's not sitting, what ends up happening, just being set in the housing, this is the other half, this is the top half, but set over here inside this one, it has to stay this way to pump water. So we're going to go get a kit. Hopefully the kit comes with the impeller, the seal right here, and possibly the two, I'm going to call these wear rings. There's one on the top and there's one on the bottom. Hopefully it comes with all that, and then we'll reassemble it. Fill up the barrel, see if it pumps water. Just like that, it's the next day, and I went to my local Mercury dealership, and lo and behold, they actually had both parts I needed in stock. So they have the seal on the top here, and they had also the impeller, which, I mean, is pretty impressive because the parts person had to go through the archives. Yeah, you heard that right, the archives, to find these parts, because he believes that this goes and dates back to like the 60s. It's not a very new motor, but it runs so good, so I want to fix it and do it right. So one thing that he did note is there was a serial number break on the impeller because they were two separate sizes. We measured them with the old one, which I had, and they were within 10,000ths of an inch, believe it or not. One was like 0.44 and the other one was 0.45 inside diameter, which is really not a lot when you consider the shaft size here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lubricate the inside of the water pump housing. Make sure that there's nothing in there, first of all. Ooh, what is that? What was that? That's not cool. Anything else in there? Oh, I better put this over the garbage. What is that? Okay. 1960s dirt, anybody? Like, this is crazy. Must be a little bit of corrosion or just, what is this? It's just a little bit of muddy water is what that is. So we're going to make sure that's all cleaned up and out of the way. And then, yeah, so we're going to wipe all this clean. And remember I was talking about the direction of the impeller and which way it needs to go? Well, we had already determined it was clockwise. So we're going to do exactly that. We're going to install it clockwise. And I always put a little bit of grease on the tip of the fins before I install it, as well as inside on the drive shaft. I'm going to slide that down, and we're going to make sure that when we line up the key that we turn this clockwise to make sure that everything is good. Oh no. I've got a little bit of corrosion buildup on this drive shaft that I think I need to clean up before I go too far. So let's get some sandpaper and do exactly that. Okay, so after that's all been cleaned up, I'm going to reapply the grease that I just removed. And then I'm going to take note as well as to where that key is. So it's actually on this particular fin. And try and line that up with where it is on the drive shaft. And then I'm going to try, and I'm going to, oh, see it's turning. Try not to do that. Not a huge deal, but and I'm going to do my best here to push in the impeller while turning it clockwise, because that is the way it's going to spend the rest of its life, is turning clockwise. So you want to give it the proper bend right off the top. Okay, one thing you want to do is you want to make sure that that impeller is seated all the way down. Then we're going to do the same with the cover on top. I'm going to give it a quick clean, lubricate it, a little bit of grease on both sides, or in this case a little bit more than I wanted. That's okay, because this is going to help it when we first fire it up to ensure that we don't have a dry startup. Then washer goes in, making sure that that little lock goes into its home. Then we can take our new seal and install that. So I'm going to pop the old one out here. Hopefully that comes out fairly easily. It has been in there for quite some time, so it's probably not going to want to help me out. So I'm just going to go throw it in the vise here and see if that helps. Alright, so here in the vise, I'm just going to try and get behind it with a small screwdriver and give it a light tap and see if I can break it free without breaking the housing. Maybe a smaller screwdriver. There she goes. Just like that. But she was really good. She wasn't going anywhere. The problem is, it's not doing its job anymore. So, out with the old, and in with the new. We're going to clean this up as well. Make sure there's nothing that's going to hold us up when we're putting it back in place. And just like this. I like to get it started with my fingers or my thumbs. I'm just going to lightly tap it in place. Oh. So it's all the way seated. And we're going to make sure it's square, and it is. And you guessed it, more grease. I like to put lots of grease when it comes to the water pumps because I don't want them to run dry. From there, we get to put our housing back in place, being careful not to cut the seal as we put it down. Oh yeah, see, this one is, you can tell it's new because it does a great job of sealing onto the shaft. Just like this. We made sure the impeller was turning in the clockwise direction, and we'll torque up these two hold down nuts. Awesome. Okay, I know I said in the past you probably shouldn't turn this drive shaft, but we're going to make sure you can turn it. In the worst case scenario, we can realign it with the prop back here. So if I give this a turn clockwise, everything feels great. So now we're ready to bolt it back up. Oh wait, no, sorry, we're not. We forgot one thing. There is an O-ring that goes right at the top here. Put that on right now before I forget. And since we're in here and this was holding us up, we're going to give this a chance for the next guy in 40 years to be able to replace this impeller. So we're going to grease the shift linkage as well, and a little bit in here so that the new pipe slides in just nice. Grease everywhere. All right, now I think we're ready. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this a little bit more gracefully than I did taking it off, where it just kind of flew out of my hands. So I'm going to make sure here, and I think I made a mistake here. Yes, I did, because I need to turn this the other way so that my pickup tube actually lines up. So I'm going to turn it around and I'll be right back. Alright, so it turns out, you know that saying, you should go with your gut instinct? Well, I was right the first time, and that's just because I didn't insert the drive shaft on the right side of the pickup tube. Actually, let me just show you what's going on inside here, because I don't think I showed you. Okay, so right down in here, what you're looking at is a couple of things. So this is the pickup tube, or the water tube, that gets drawn up. Like, this is where the water pump connects to, and that pulls up water into the cooling jackets of the engine, keeps everything running cool. That little dimple lines up exactly with the little dimple on the housing. This tube right here is where your, sorry if I can stop moving, I'm not sure if you'll see it, maybe you won't, but that's where your gear selector lines up. And then this is just where your bolt is on the other side. And yeah, so that's pretty, this one here is pretty basic. Some of them will also have an exhaust tube that will come out and exhaust through the, can't speak tonight, through the prop. But in this case, we have, this is where the water comes out, and I'm pretty sure it just exhausts, it might actually exhaust all through the prop here. This might be the whole exhaust system right here, which is probably why it's a little bit yucky. Okay, so let's give this a try here, see if we can line everything up. Take our time. We're going to want to make sure that little water tube lines up perfectly with the water pump housing, and that little dimple is in the right orientation. So this part here can be a little bit tricky. Remember, I was saying it's probably not a good idea to rotate that drive shaft. Well, guess what's holding me up right now? And it's almost nearly impossible to not turn it when you're installing that water pump or the impeller, because it kind of needs to be turned in. So it's just, these are just not always fun to do. And what ends up happening is when it finally does line up, you got to put your finger in here to push everything in. You crush your finger. It's just not my favorite job, but we'll get it. On to the home stretch. Got the two nuts started. Do a little bit at a time here, making sure that I draw it in slowly. And lastly, what you want to do is make sure that your gear selector is working freely. And now we're only left to go throw this in the barrel and see if it works good. Let's cross our fingers. Alright guys, so here we are. We are outside in my carport under the lights. Luckily I got some nice lights. It's actually raining a little bit and I've got a cover over my head, so that's kind of cool. And we are next to my owl that I haven't hung up yet. Anyways, more projects. But we're going to try to get this engine started. So like I mentioned earlier, these are kind of my nemesis. They've been always my nemesis, but I did store the fuel. I did store this properly. I had some stabilizer in it. I've got a little bit of gas left in the tank. So let's just hook it up and see where we stand here. I really hope I don't have to pull this carburetor, because not that it's hard. This thing's only like 2 bolts and really easy to get to, but it's not the point. So set this to start. I don't think there's an off switch on this. I think you just dial this back. It's been a while. We are in neutral. Yeah. Full choke. Now let's prime the ball. Alright, so almost 3.5 primes, and she's pretty solid here. So let's see what happens here. Come on. Guys, I'm sure people are going to start commenting that I staged this stuff, but I don't. I really don't. This just proves that if you just store your stuff properly, it's how it's going to run. Like, I mean, I had the full service, brand new spark plugs, freshly cleaned carb, and when I stored it, I made sure I ran it dry. There was nothing left in the carburetor, so whatever fuel I just put in was also stabilized. So I didn't stage it. Anyways, let's see if it continues. Like, I mean, it just fired up real quick, but okay, I think we're still gonna need some choke. Oh yeah, see what I mean? I might have just got lucky. Come on, girl. Maybe some prime. Oh, she wants to. I might have spoke too soon. See, Nemesis? Right here. She just doesn't want to continue. Looks like I got lucky on the first shot, because clearly she doesn't want to continue. And the difficult part about this is it's not like I can cheat and give it some squirt in the carburetor while I'm trying to crank it. Like I said earlier, the recoil is all part of the cover. So okay, so we're back inside, and that's because, you guessed it, I need more work, or there's more work to be done on this motor. It does run. I didn't film it, but it does run. It just doesn't idle, and that's kind of the whole purpose of some of these smaller horsepower engines. You want to be able to throw it on the back of the boat and just kind of putt around. So it runs about like half throttle and up. So there's probably the main jet's good, but the intermediate jet and probably the pilot jet and the carburetor is plugged. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean all that up, and I'll meet you guys back outside to show you that it actually does in fact run and hopefully pump water. Not that these water pumps are very big, as you can see, so I'm not expecting like a stream. I'm expecting, you know, a constant amount of water coming through the exhaust port or exhaust port of the water jacket. So, okay, we'll see you in a little bit. Well guys, it's been a couple of days and I am at a complete loss. So here is the development that's recently happened in the last few days. So I did remove the carburetor. It's very simple. Cleaned it out. There's only 2 jets in there. Didn't find anything. Actually, if anything, for such an age, it's in really good condition. It should run. So I did a little bit more testing, and I mean, honestly guys, I'm trying to keep this a little bit condensed because I've been at this for a while. I removed, and this was the difficult part, I had to remove the cover after the engine was started because I wanted to check for spark to see what was happening. So I put my spark tester on. That was fun because it barely clears and it makes a bunch of sparks and stuff when you're not, I don't recommend it, pretty dangerous. So what I determined is, for some odd reason, the spark cuts out at about, like I was saying earlier, about half throttle. It doesn't spark anymore after that. So how it got started in the first place must have been a miracle. So I'm actually looking out for your help now. If you have any type of idea as to what this might be, please comment down below. Send me an email at thmrepairs.com. I would love to know more about these engines. The information's starting to get a little bit hard to find. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to stop the video here, but just so you know, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to look at the keyway under the flywheel here. I'm going to remove the bolt, pull the flywheel, see how that looks. Look at the stator plate. It seems to be moving fine. It seems to be well adjusted. Everything looks good. At this point, I don't really know. And if I can, I mean, the coil's good. It's making good spark. I just don't know, honestly, what's causing it to cut out early. So anyways, guys, if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up. And I hate to say it, but my Nemesis beat me this time. And I mean, I've lost in the past. I don't mind losing to a machine. I haven't completely lost it. I'm not giving up on it yet. But yeah, this is one of those situations where I just didn't win. So again, thank you so much for watching. You guys are the best if you stayed to the end. And I will see all of you in the next video. Oh, and before we go, I always try and give you guys the tip of the day. And this time here, I'm going to have to say the tip of the day is going to be just resilience. You're going to get some of these things that are going to happen to you, and just make sure that you keep on the up and up. Stay positive. You will fix it. There are people out there that can help you, whether it's this or anything else. Stay resilient, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.